All right, James. Yeah, go ahead, James.
Okay, about the submissions. So I sent you three on accident because in the middle of the night I realized I didn't double check my work. And I was like, I think there was a major mistake on there. So I went on, and yes, there was a major mistake. I resubmitted it, and I made another mistake because I forgot to put the PDF in stuff because it was like the middle of the night, and I was still sleepy. And once I kind of like woke up, I was like, yeah, I did it wrong. And I sent one that said like final resubmission, whatever. I don't know if you have a policy of the first one is the one you grade. I just wanted to let you know that I corrected it before the due date and I sent another one to you. So,
Well, that's a good question. No, I wouldn't ding you for it, but I already did ding you for it.
oh,
So I'll correct it. I did see that after because I started at the bottom, with people that submitted first and grading everything or answering emails from the bottom and working my way up to the newest. And after I graded yours and I saw two more submissions, and I was like, moving on at this point. So thank you for clarifying that. You probably did on the emails because I think it said submission one, resubmit two,
yes.
resubmit three. So disregard the grade that's in the grade book and disregard that first email. I'll go back and I'll go to the third submission, right?
Yes, the third submission that says the final submission.
All right. I'll start grading from there again. So thank you for letting me know that and I appreciate that. Javier, go ahead.
Professor,
Yes,
uh,
go ahead.
yesterday I sent you an email about have a bit. I about PK Lab 3 Assignment 3. I tried to convert it in PDF, and every time I did it, it would give me a fatal error every time I try to do it. Like I did like 10 times already, and for some reason it forced close AutoCAD every time I make PDF. Convert it to PDF. One of these for PK3 and Lab 3 Assignment 3. Every time I do it, it will make a PDF.
Okay. When something like that happens, you need to close everything down. I think it was somebody else. I responded back to an email, not over the weekend, but last week, that if something like that happens, and I understand that Javier, and I understand the frustration on that. Unfortunately, I usually don't answer emails over the weekend, especially on Sunday. But if that happens, here's what you do. You can start by just closing AutoCAD and then redo it and try to make another PDF. If that problem continues, then you need to reboot, close everything down and reboot and try it again and see if that doesn't fix the problem. Um, Sometimes when we get into hatching, that causes some issues. I've never heard of Javier, what you just pointed out, but sometimes things will get frozen. Software will get frozen, whether it's the PDF software or which is internal, or if it's the DWG, the AutoCAD software itself, sometimes that will freeze up. So rebooting is answer to a lot of things. The other thing is making sure when you're doing something that you don't have multiple files, either DWG files or any other thing open that may be putting a stress on your computer. For example, this PowerPoint that I just set up, um, it took probably, I don't know, a good minute, maybe 2 minutes to load into Blackboard because there's only 13 files, but there's a lot of pictures. So it was very strenuous on not my computer, but on the download of that. So anytime that happens, reboot. And then if it gets down to it, Javier, and anybody else, this goes for anybody else, um, make sure you just submit what you have. I mean, sometimes you can't do it and just put in there that you couldn't do it and that you followed the videos, you took a look at the videos and couldn't do it. So I am definitely looking at that. After I worked over the problem with the JPEG, everything seemed to be working. So if there's some other issues out there, now the PDF portion of the Acrobat Pro, I still have not heard back on getting you guys set up on that. I'm just scanning through my emails right now to see if there was anything else that came in. Let's see. I'm not seeing anything yet, so I'll have to follow up on that. I don't know if anybody else is out there has received any emails, because I definitely haven't received anything back on the correspondence about getting you guys Acrobat Pro. So anyway, we'll work through the issues as we go. I have grace for that, Javier. So
I managed to make a separate file to see if it worked, and it actually did make a PDF, but everything's straight black. Everything is straight black up there. I have put this. All the hatching is all black, and you can't see it. You can't see the house there. I made it separate. I made it do it separately, but yeah.
you don't have Acrobat Pro, right?
Ooh,
Acrobat Pro, the PDF writer.
let me see. Acrobat Pro, no. I just did. I just did export. How about I export to PDF to the current to the assignment of PK3 Lab 3 assignment 3, and when it converted the PDF, it made the PDF. It just went black. It's just straight black.
All right. Well, I'll take a look at it and we'll go from there. All right.
Also, like remind you that I might leave early for the appointment about for my hearing appointment. So that's pretty much it right there.
All right. Thanks for the heads up on that. I appreciate that. All right. Appreciate that. And then let's see, it was Larry. I started grading your submission, and you said something about there on there about you looked at the video a bunch of times and couldn't figure it out. What, Larry? What subject was that? What topic was that comment about?
The putting them all on a PDF.
Okay. All right.
I think I figured it out.
All right. Yeah, I thought I showed it on the video, but the video that I might have shown you, it did have the information in there, but it was kind of embedded on how to make one PDF. It showed you how to make multiple, but the emphasis on the video was one PDF. So I'm not sure if I made another one. So we'll check. I'll check that out and see. I just started looking at yours, so
Okay, be nice.
I will. Like I said, I have grace going into this week after last week what we had going on. So
Okay.
all right. VR says I use the PDF combiner website. Okay, yeah, and that is probably just a generic PDF. It's not Acrobat Pro. I don't know on that. So there are some tools available. Not everything works with AutoCAD. So again, if you run into a problem when you start you're running into a deadline, you're running out of time. Let me put it that way. You're running out of time before the submission, any submission. Again, always submit what you have at least. I mean, if you couldn't combine the PDFs, if you couldn't get something to work, please submit what you have, because that's the hard rule. They can't take anything late. If you at least send in what you have, and then we can have a discussion on what the issues were, and I'll evaluate it from there. So was it an issue with you maybe not seeing all the information or reading all the information, or was it an issue with technology that we are having problems working out? I'll evaluate it from there. James Meek, go ahead.
So I just read over your email. Some of that stuff I didn't know, so I didn't correct it in the final one. But just for future reference, you don't want the text in the usual default green or whatever that like I was taught in. You wanted the dimensions in black font or gray.
Well, it's more for appearance, James, and this is for everybody as well. I never heard that the default was green in AutoCAD. Everything was always black.
Maybe that's a mechanical thing. I don't know. That's what I was taught by my
Oh,
professor.
I the mechanical field. Yeah, I've never Never heard that one. Most mechanical, from my experience, James, I'm not going against any instructor that you had previous or any professor you had previous. I'm just saying from my experience, most mechanical drawings, when we're looking at just two-dimensional drawings, are black and white or grays and whatever, not color. So with landscape and with architecture, that's when we get into a little more color. Typically plans, and let's just go to landscape, or not landscape, oh, even in landscape, well, let's go to architectural plans. 2D are usually black and or gray tones. When we get
Okay.
into colors, of course, the landscaping, we'll get get into colors. But for readability, that's why I was commenting on that. That readability would have been a lot easier in a darker color. It didn't have to be gray or black. Against that green background that you had, I had to zoom in on it to really read it.
Okay. Yeah, that was just a professor preference. It made it readable for him. So I just wanted to like see what I was doing there, and if that's your preference, and you said that's what real world will do, then I'll do that then.
Okay, and I appreciate that, James, because that brings up another topic for everybody. Actually, make sure you're looking at your drawings. And James Meek said, you were kind of sleepy-eyed. So before you, I don't want to say before you submit, maybe when you complete the drawing, you're getting ready to move to another set or another sheet. Look at that drawing in the D format or whatever it's calling for. Look at it after you scale it, everything. So look at what's the first thing that jumps up at you. Is your name huge in the title block? And that's where your eyes go, or is your name in red in the title block? So that you want your focus to be the main thing of your drawing. So I know there's a lot going on with your yard, everybody's yard. So what's the main focus in a two-dimensional drawing? So just make sure your eyes don't go to notes first, or to this huge tree that you've made it a solid green. You can't see 3/4 of the yard. They should be a transparent tree, but maybe it's a real lime green. Maybe it looks great in model space. You're thinking, hey, this is a dynamite drawing. When you flip over to paper space and scale it, that's another huge issue. Everything might look great in model space as far as size, proportion. But when you go over to paper space and you open that viewport, everything looks great, somewhat maybe, or maybe a little different against white paper, because usually you're working on a darker background in model space. Now you're against white paper, so perspective changes on that. And then the size, when you scale it, is going to change too. And so that's why you have to be really aware of your text height in paper space. Yeah, like I said, your all readability and model space, everything looks cool. But when you scale it, and that's going to change the perspective on that whole drawing, colors, size of text, size of dimensions, colors of dimensions, and colors of notes, and whole perspective changes. But you want your eye immediately to go to your, in this case, landscape drawing itself. Not over to dimensions, not over to notes or anything like that. But typically, you're going to use the colors on the focal point. So the greens and the gradients and the hatching for the driveway and things like that. You're going to use, your eyes are going to go towards the colors first. Everything else should be, the notes should either be in a black or a gray. And when you start hitting the gray tones, that's really an easy way to control where your eyes go. So hopefully that not only James, Meek, but everybody else, that helps you a little bit. Look at your drawings before you submit them in paper space after they're scaled. So many students, and I go through this every semester, and it's not just in this class, it's every class I've ever had. They do not review their drawings close enough. And I tell them in class, I said, and obviously you can't do this at home, but I tell them in class, after you print out your drawing, you think it's all cool and great looking, hold it up to somebody else and ask them, what's the first thing you see? So, call in your wife or your significant other and have them look at it on the monitor. Just pull up that one drawing. What's the first thing you see when you look at that? do your eyes go to your notes, or do their eyes go to your name or something else other than your drawing? So that's a good way to test it out if you can't see it yourself. So when I open up on these monitors, and I flip over to, or a PDF, open up PDF, my eyes are going to go somewhere, right? Something's going to catch that attention first. And that's why I always tell students, make sure you position your PDF the way you want it open. Don't have it slightly off to one side, or even your DWG files professionally should be opening. When I open a DWG file, they should be opening to the paper space sheet number 1, if that's part of the assignment. Sheet 1, nicely centered, scaled, right in front. That professionally, that's how they'll have you do it. Usually it will be a PDF, or it will be a cloud version that's locked, but still they're going to open it up. A client's going to open up. He doesn't want to go from model space over to paper space and find out which tab he wants to look at. He should be opening up in a sheet set, opening up the sheet 1, nicely centered on there, whether it's DWG or PDF. PDF usually centers everything for you, so make sure they're in the proper order. All right, so we definitely have some issues with both technology and working through some of the issues on the assignments, but we will move ahead. Like I said, I will have Grace, James, Mika will go back and review your submissions there again. And
Yeah, the whole moral of my story on that is measure twice at once kind of thing. Just make sure you check how it looks before you send it. Which I usually do, but as I said, like, I had done it late, gone to sleep, and then completely woke up and like, oh no, I messed up.
Right.
It's something I usually do, but
Right.
yeah.
And so, and then usually that one thing that you don't do that one time is when it goes to the big boss, right?
Yes.
So, and I'm not the big boss, I'm just a conduit to leading you towards the big boss. So
You're acting as the big boss
okay.
because
Yeah.
you're acting as the big boss in this sense because you're preparing us for reality also.
Right. That's what I'm trying to do. Good way to put it. Yeah. I'm stepping in as that role playing right now. So absolutely. And I want to prepare you guys for industry. It doesn't matter where you go. Doesn't matter what industry you go into. So I want to prepare you for that. All right, some good points. If there's nothing else on topic, so announcement I will send out today, but I wanted to tell you before I send it out, before I give you the big announcement. Zach, go right ahead.
I could just say one thing about that, like double checking your work before you send it off. I know in the real world, because I work in this every day, when we send stuff off to QC, I'll print it out in a PDF, and you really have to go comb through it and make sure that you didn't have something in a layer that didn't print, or didn't have something. Make sure the sheet is set up to print the right way, because you'll have something that'll print a different size, and when you send that off to the engineers and it comes back multiple times, they tend to get pretty angry.
Because time is money, right, Zach? It's
Yes.
And Zach, do you guys have a plan checker?
Our engineers go over and they'll QC, either engineers or project managers. And then we have what's called Bluebeam, where we upload all of our PDFs, and they go through and they redline them all, and then we get it back and we go through and fix everything and make sure it's all right.
Wow. So Bluebeam, never heard of that before. Is that like a plan checker, electronic?
Yeah, you upload your PDFs to it, and you can like put notes, and we all have our own color that we go through and we highlight if we've hit that spot or not, because you have multiple people on a project. And I mean, one of the projects we have right now has like 87 sheets, so just keeping up with all that is.
Yeah. That's intense, and for sure, it's and so those are internal engineers, right? I mean, they're part of your company, right?
Yes, and then we'll have a 10%, a 50, like a 70, and 90, and then 100. So each one of those will go through our engineers. Then they get sent to the client. If the client has any remarks, they come back and we change them.
Right. So engineers, even if they're part of the company, get a little touchy with resubmissions and stuff you miss. So Zach, thank you for that, for backing up on that. I appreciate that. And thanks for bringing that in. We need real world experience as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I talked to my dad about what I did. He said that type of mistake will be tolerated once or twice, because if you continuously do it, he's like, they're going to find somebody else.
Yeah, especially if you're the new guy on the block. If let's just say, and thanks for that comment, James. Let's say you got hired new and you're doing a bang up job for 2 or 3 years. And then all of a sudden, something like this, you keep missing things or whatever, a couple times in a row. The same thing's going to apply. They may give you a little more grace depending on who your direct is, and up from there who your drawings are going to. They may give you a little more grace, but there's going to be a limitation. And it's not their. I mean, some people like to be mean, right? But they're not. I don't want to say that they're trying to be mean. They have a realistic view of money, and that's what business is all about. I mean, yeah, there should be businesses about helping people and doing great projects for the right amount of work and not gouging and all that. But bottom line, it comes down to how much they're making, and if they're constantly have to coming back to you and said, well, we told you 3 times to change this line, and you keep missing it. We're really worried about you. You've had 5 years or 6 years of great track record. What's going on? That would be a nice employer. The other one would be, you've missed this 4 times. One more time, you're out of here, without even saying, hey, what's going on personally? You had great track record. What's happening? So just depending on the company. So thank you both, James and Zach, for bringing that in. That anytime anybody can bring in real world experience. Because it gets, like I said, it gets down to time and money. Let's crank it out. Let's get it done. Let's get the client satisfied and go from there. So good points, guys. All right. So the announcement is on the midterm, a week from today. I know it's kind of brutal, right, on Monday to announce that, but I want to give you a week's advance notice on it. We'll cover everything we've had in the class so far. So review all the PowerPoints, lectures if you need be. I'll do a review on Thursday, just a small review, nothing, not giving you any answers or anything like that, but I'll maybe give you some sampling of questions. And I don't know how many yet. I haven't got down that road, but there may be a drawing as well. So that will be on, the midterm will be on Monday, review on Thursday. And let me make a note on that for myself. I'm not lying to you guys. And review on Thursday. And I don't know what the date is. I can't count in my fingers. That would be the 12th. All right. And much as I do not like testing, that's a format that we have to do. And then the other question, I'm sure, and I didn't check this morning because I thought, somebody would ask that question. Can we review the pop quiz? See if everybody's taken that. And James Meek says, I don't like testing either. Yeah, I really don't. But it kind of gets down to real world testing does. So, and I think one other oh, wait a minute. I think they took it. So, let's see here. Yep. I think it's one person. I think they took it. All right. Yep. So we are good. So I will do that right now. And let me get over to that. And I will review the pop quiz right now. So I'll just go each question, and then I'll give you the answer on each one. So the midterm we formatted the same, pretty much the same way with the true and false, multiple choice, etc. Same as the final exam. All right. There were 10 questions. The term hardscape defines all non-man-made features. That is false. The term hardscape defines all non-man-made features. False on that. Site analysis includes which of the following items? Drainage, soil analysis, wind direction, sun exposure, traffic flow, all of the above, or none of the above. The answer is all of the above. True or false? The term linking spaces, which I forgot which chapter it's in or which PowerPoint it was in, but we talked about linking spaces. The term linking spaces requires all individual areas, in parentheses, spaces, in a landscape plan to be connected with a hardscape material, which is false. They can be connected with a softscape material, mulch, or gravel, or anything like that. They have to be with a concrete hardscape. Next question was, a site analysis should use SWOT method to determine the site's strengths, weaknesses, options, or threats. So it's false because SWOT is not options, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So if you read carefully, sometimes you have to slow down on these. A lot of times I know when taking tests, you read the first part of the question or the statement, and you're immediately going, I know the answer, without even reading all the way through. And you may read all the way through, but actually your mind skims through it. You don't pick it up. So make sure you read all the way through. So options is not part of SWOT. Opportunities is part of SWOT. So I asked you what was your career objective. So if you get something in there, what was your career when you finish? Okay, let me state the whole thing. What do you want to do as far as a career when you finish college? It's kind of like a gimme question. I usually have one of those in there. So whatever you put in there, as long as you answered something, I gave you full credit on that. All right. Fill in the blank. Softscape refers to the live blank elements of landscape, and the answer was horticulture. All right, and then we talked about contour lines. That was the next question. Contour lines on a site plan are used to determine the direction of traffic flow. That is false. They're used to determine elevations of a site. That elevation is above mean sea level. And that doesn't mean when the ocean is angry. That is something other than average. And for you mathematicians, I forget what mean and average, there's a difference between how they're figured out. Anyway, mean sea level contour lines are for elevation. As site plan question. A site plan is a readable plan of the interior and exterior of a commercial building. That is false. For the land of any building on the outside, a land that encompasses on the side. Next one was true or false. When developing a site analysis, the adjoining property information needs to be recorded only when drainage from the study property shows drainage going to the adjoining property. And that is false. Any kind of information that affects the site, the study, needs to be recorded. Any information for adjoining property needs to be recorded, including drainage. It could be a tree that hangs over is causing a shade issue, or maybe the tree is dropping fruit the tracking rodents, and so any type of effect from an adjacent property needs to be recorded. The next one was topographic in nature. Topographic study of a site refers to only studying all the existing roof lines. This includes the study of, but not limited to, main buildings, sheds, garden houses, and workshops, which is false. Topographic is the study of the land and the contours of the land. All right, so that was all the questions from the pop quiz and a review on those. I heard a couple of comments come in. James Meek says, he says, okay, he likes the freebies. Yes. Iman says, thumbs up on that. No problem at all. Wish I could have done it earlier, but maybe later is better, right? Sometimes the information will stick a little bit there. All right. That is the pop quiz review, and let's see what else we have. So midterm, I'll let you know. I'll send an announcement. Just make sure everybody hears it. And for those listening to the recording, again on a 11/12 will be the midterm will be on 11/16, and we'll do a review on 11/12, and I'll send out an announcement on that. And and then review the announcement that I sent out. Let's see here. Okay, so and I'll go ahead and share the screen here in case you didn't see the announcement. Now, to tell you the truth, I think I sent out a couple. No, I just sent out one. That's right. And so the announcement that I sent out is right here, and that is make sure you're using on all our designs, landscape, the front yard, the rotunda, anything else that comes up, make sure you're using a minimum of, on all the projects for the class, at a minimum use one from each of the following categories. So at least one from each. Not limited to one, but at least one from each. So if you're if you're taking out all the trees, let's say on your site, you need to replace it at least with one tree. Now we talked about the aesthetics looking and the eye appealing, that odd numbers are best when putting in or grouping plants of like types. Then go with trees. It doesn't mean you have to have a cluster of 3 trees. You could have 2 on one side and 1 on the other. That would be 3. Or you could have 1 on one side, 1 on the other side of the drive, and 1 towards the front. So there's 3 or 1. On the left-hand side of our drive, I have 2 red buds. Sorry. 2 red buds on that, but right behind that, on the left side of the drive, is a crepe myrtle. So we have 3 trees on the right-hand side, and I have 2 more trees, one in the main part of the yard, 1 in the parkway. So that gives me a total of 5 trees. So, some comments coming in. Let me pick up on that. James says, in retrospect, I don't understand how I missed some of those. Ground turf typo. Ground cover. Okay. Not ground cover, but ground cover. Okay. Yeah. Oh, I see. On my typo. Yeah. Thanks. I see that now. So I'll have to resend that, and you'll get another email on that. I think I was thinking about growing the ground cover, right? Thanks, James, on that. Appreciate that. All right. So that is a recap of what you need to use, at least one of each from that. Larry, go right ahead.
On our front yard project,
Yes.
this, when you say I need to use minimum of each one, does that mean, let's say lawn turf? I already have lawn turf there. I need to put new lawn turf or
Nope. So you're using it, right? So it kind of goes back
Yeah.
to the scenario of the trees. So if
yeah,
you're,
I've got about 1,000,000 trees in my yard and I need to cut some down, matter of fact. So
yeah, so you just put removal, as long as you have one tree standing, you're
okay.
okay.
Gotcha.
If
Okay.
you're replacing the lawn, then you would say, you know, it was replaced with, St. Augustine or whatever you put in there. If you have an existing, that's why I say call out existing and replacing items. You know, like you said, you have a bunch of trees, so you have them plotted
Yeah.
out there, and then you, on your final submission, you would make a note saying removed 5 trees and planted 1 additional one, or removed all existing trees and planted, 3 additional ones, 3 new ones, or something like that. But just call
Right.
it out. That way, I know that you're addressing these different areas, including the grown cover. Thanks.
Okay. This is all make believe, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah. Now, yes, for everybody, it's just, yeah, I'm not going to, okay, Larry, you have to have this done by spring of next year, and I want to see it. It's going to affect your grade. No,
yeah.
it's all, yeah, there's no budget for it. Now, James Meek says he intends someday possibly to do this, so he'd like to lay out plans accordingly, and that's totally understandable. That's fine on that. Understand that completely. All right, Larry?
Okay.
All right, cool. Anything else while I transition to irrigation presentation? All right. All right, we'll get going on the presentation for today. 10 after 1 right now, so I'll try to hold this. There's 13 slides. Some new information. It's going to be a lot of terminology that might be new to you, maybe or maybe not. Depends. I guess it kind of depends. Number one, if you're a homeowner, or you live in a residence where you take care of the lawn, the outside area. Or number two, if you have been involved in some kind of landscaping irrigation, it might not be new to you. But if you haven't touched any of those areas, this will be some new information, some things that possibly could be on the test as well. So we will get into irrigation. So basically, providing water for a landscape area. That's what we're going to be taking a look at. So here is just an example of a landscape irrigation plan. The dash lines, of course, they're a type of hidden line because it's not an actual feature. They're showing the spray pattern. I'll go ahead and pencil this up a little bit. Let's see. So they're showing a spray pattern. So if we take this head right here, this is showing, this dash line is showing the spray pattern from this one head. All right. We have full heads, we have quarter heads. So here's a quarter or 3/4, excuse me. We have half heads right here. Right here. There's a half. There's a half. We have planter irrigation as well. We'll get into that. Drip systems. And we have what we call ICVs, irrigation control valves, called out here. And I'm not sure, there's the main water meter, so everything will run, typically it will run from the street to your, the supply will run for the sprinklers, will run from the street to your water meter, and then it will have the supply, of course, running to the house. And then at some point you will have the irrigation coming off of that supply line along with a backflow preventer, and we'll talk more about. You can see how the outline of the building, of the house is depicted. You can see the hardscape here, and they're showing the main lines running from the ICVs, the irrigation control valves, with the green here tying into the supply lines, the lateral supplied lines for the irrigation. So just a typical plan that you guys will be working towards covering this. Another thing I want you to notice as well is the overlapping. So we have this 3/4 here, but we also have this full head here, which is really just great coverage. I mean, we don't see any areas that are not covered. So that's something in the planning that you'll go for, especially here in Texas, to make sure everything is covered. Some things we have to look at, we've talked about just in the previous slide right there, the main water supply on that coming in. Here's our backflow preventer. And what that is to prevent any water going back into the main water supply that feeds the house. So once that water gets passed into the irrigation system, and here's a separate valve, shut-off valve for that. So if that somehow fails or is open and water, it will travel back, but it's preventing it from getting into the water supply to the house, all right? Because it can be contaminated, not so much, and it can be through PVC piping, but you do have fertilizers and things that could work their way into the system, especially with small emitters. We'll talk about that on a drip system. Small emitters could allow that to come in as well. Because that fertilizer, if you do fertilize and put that on the yard, it will liquefy, and that's what penetrates into the ground area. Another thing we want to look at as far as terminology is a controller. These have changed. We'll talk about the changes on those. Those are like a timer that will control what time and duration of each line will come on. Each line or line calculations, depending on the volume of water needed and how many heads, they will have so many heads per valve. This is individual valves here. And if you can see the wires that are connected to those type of valves, these are valves as well, just different types for different types of volume. And as you can see, these are typically in Texas anyway, and they're changing in other states because of the freeze. These are underground, and in some states they have to be lower than that because of the ground freezing, such as Maine or Connecticut and some of those areas. California, typically when they started out, and I apologize, I don't know this now, when we left in 05, moved out here in 05, but when we left our house we were at, it was built in, I think, 98. I think it was built in. It had above ground valves, and they had originally actually the above ground valves, they would come at a pipe below ground, and then the valve would come up like this. It had a basically if you're looking at it from top, looking down at the valve, a key. It had a cross like this, and you would put a key on this and be able to turn the valve on or off manually. That was above ground. As you can see, these are below ground. So it's the same function as these valves here, it's more of a gate system. If you know anything about valves shutting on off, they have a gate or a ball system. These were a gate system. So they progressed now with timers that people could afford timers, and they are electronic. So they introduced what we call solenoids that were put into or built into the valves now. So these valves were eventually replaced, still above ground, and had the solenoids that would stick up here, had the wires running off of them into the ground, which would go back to your controller. And again, that would tell you what day or days it would come on, what time of the day it would come on, the duration it would come on. So that's changed up. I don't know if they've gone to completely underground in California or not. I'm sure there's some codes and stuff for that, but it's aesthetically, it's a lot better looking. Maintenance-wise, it can be a little tougher. So there's pros and cons on it. We'll be talking about the different types of heads on here. Larry says, so his contractor, my water hose, my miniature John Deere tractor. Love it, Larry. Those are cool irrigation systems, and sometimes they're more efficient, actually. Larry, thank you for bringing that up. So what Larry has, I'm thinking, is a John Deere tractor that actually walks along the hose line. Am I right, Larry? Yep. Okay, love those. The reason I love them because you can tell them exactly where to go, the amount of water, and not spray too much on the sidewalks or the concrete drive, and you can direct them exactly the pattern you want to water the yard. Now, in addition to that, now Larry, I don't know if you have this, but you could actually put a timer where your hose is at, so you don't forget it like I do, and I use a manual system because we're on a watering restriction here, and so we only can water with sprinkler systems 2 days a week for a certain amount of time, and you can water either by hand or a tractor system like Larry has, or I have a frog. I mean, it's a decorative frog that I can use. It's not like nice like Larry's. It doesn't hop along a track system. It stays stationary. But I forget about it sometimes. So you can actually put a timer. You can put a timer on the hose bib where the water comes to your hose, and then hook the hose to the timer, and you can have that water shut off at a specific set of times. So yes, Larry, you can use those. Oh, okay, gotcha. I thought you hooked the kitchen timer up to your hose. That was going to scare me a little bit. But yeah, and I use the one on my clock, my phone. What do? Turn it off, and somebody goes, "Oh, could you?" This phone. Oh yeah. Oh, I forgot to get this over. Half an hour later, you got water running down the sidewalk. So anyway, good point, Larry. And Larry, for your yard, I'm not dictating that. You can use it. For our class, you'll need to design a plan. So sorry about that. Can't get out of that. I don't know if that was where you were headed. All right. So we have some different kinds of system heads on here. We have what we call bubblers. We'll get more into that. Emitters, a drip line, spray heads, impact sprays. These are not used so much anymore. My screen just went blank. So I'll have to stall here for a second. Just love when that happens. But the impact heads were used a lot, and they still are used a lot for farming irrigation. They use impact. They also use a flooding technique we'll talk more about. But the impact heads were used a lot on lawns, and they're not used so much anymore because it's harder to control the distance and not so much the pattern, but the distance and the coverage on these. They're a little more difficult to control. They still use them in irrigation. They may still use them at some schoolyards, some ball fields. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at those. They're not that efficient as far as some of the things I just mentioned. And I bought, we go to the, not Goodwill, but like thrift shops and things like that a lot. And one of the thrift shops I went to, I went in there one day and I see a tripod that has an impact sprayer on it. And it was designed that way. You still can buy these. It wasn't like it was some antique or something. It was just somebody got rid of it. It was almost brand new. It was hardly used. Anyway, so I thought of our son because he has a large backyard that's not irrigated. His front yard is not irrigated as well. And so he has an old house from 1954. I thought this would be perfect. He could set it up in one corner of the yard, probably hit, with that thing, he probably can hit 3/4 of the yard as size as the yard is, set it up in the other corner after he's done and have his yard done. And so I thought, well, I better take it home and test it out. So I bought it for him. He bought it for him, took it in the backyard and got it set up what I thought was the right pattern on it, turned the hose on, and my neighbor's yard. I mean, this thing shot at least 50 feet, just right on their windows too, so not good. So impact heads. So let me go over the comments because James Meek put something in there. I wasn't planning on an irrigation system, but I don't know how to set one up for a semi and landscape. Well, we're going to walk through that. So James, yeah, you'll still have to design one. Not that you'll ever have to use it, but you'll still have to design one. At least you'll have the knowledge of it. And we'll be walking through how to set one of those up for you. So education in the works here. So thanks for bringing that up. Yeah. So we have the impact heads, and those are, like I said, for larger areas. And then we have the rotary system. Now we have pop-ups that usually are the spray type. These are pop-up heads, and we'll talk about the difference in that compared to the rotary system, which are a little more expensive heads. So there's a whole bunch of terminology for you. We just went through a bunch of terms on that. Again, this will be posted for your review, as always on that. So we'll get more into detail as we move through here. And James McGinn says, thank you. Okay, I will get that posted. And I thought I already did. I guess I could check. This glaring mistake on announcements just hit me in the head, and I kind of wanted to leave that up, but I will check lessons, and this should be under packet 4. And let's see, did I post that? Oh, down here. Did I look in the right place? 11, 12, and 13. So we have 3 of the PowerPoints posted on there as well. And for what area are the best? Okay, yeah. So James McGinn says what, and I think he's referring to what type of heads are the best for what areas. So I'm going to briefly go through that. We'll cover that again, but I'll briefly go through it. So bubblers. Basically, bubblers are to flood an area, and that can be for shrubbery areas. You typically don't want to have it with low-lying plants because it will soak. If the plants don't like a lot of moisture on the leaves, such as when actually bubblers would work in a tomato garden because they get big enough, and so because tomato plants don't like direct moisture, a lot of moisture on the plants. But if you have plants that don't like moisture on the leaves, that bubblers would not be good. But for shrubs that are growing up, bubblers would be good in those areas. The emitters are for direct watering to the plants. Those are a drip type system. You can actually control the emitters for gallons per minute on those. So if you have plants that need a certain amount of water directly to them, not sprayed on, and these are very efficient for keeping evaporation down as well. So the emitters for planters areas as well. The drip lines, again, those will be for planters, and those will be for something that you can run the line, and this will be a flexible line. It won't be a PVC, a hard PVC. It'll be a flexible line you can run right next to the plants. I have those on the vegetable garden, so these are great for gardens. And then you can actually control where the emitter goes by punching a hole in it. There's a hole punch, punching a hole for the emitter, put the emitter in, and then control the amount of volume of water that comes out of that. So that would be for like vegetable gardens and specific plants. On the drip line, just a quick side note, they've already done this, but it's still expensive, using a drip line to irrigate your lawn area. So the drip line is underground, so you never have any spraying above ground. Kind of interesting to talk about that later on. Spray heads are typically like the lawn area. So on the previous slide that I showed you, these would be like spray heads, but where the distinction comes in for lawn areas, the type of spray that you're looking for. Is it going to be rotor, which is lawn for lawn areas as well, or pop-ups? We'll talk more about that. And these, again, the impacts will be for lawns, typically for wide open areas like football fields or crop watering. So helpful, James, hopefully that helps. Great question. James McGinn, a great question on that. Thanks for asking that on that. So here we have the next one, and just another depiction of the individual heads that we had talked about. The same terminology. We have a main water supply coming in. Here we have the backflow regulator. I think that's called microflow. No, that's a different type. I'm sorry, that's not the backflow. The backflow is going to be back here somewhere, I believe, on this one. Yes. This is an ICV here that controls the whole system. So they're running a separate line here all the way up to the control box, and from here they're going to branch off and run. And these are the controllers here that are going to control the feed lines, which control the lateral lines to the different heads. And they have a couple different heads on here. Here they have a drip system, again, that's running through a planted area, so it's more direct. These type of plants that they're depicting here anyway are low watering. They don't need as much watering as the lawn area. They don't need as much water volume as the lawn area. Also, they show in here, and this is where everything is escalating to, controlling the controller from your phone or remotely from your PC. They also have, and this is what the Wi-Fi is here to control this. They also have a new type of controller, and I say new, it's not really new, it's just becoming more affordable. That it will actually is a rain gauge, so it will tell if it's raining, so it will shut the whole system down. How many times have you seen, and we'll take a look at some pictures of that, how many times have you seen the water on either right when it's raining or right after it's rain, or you know it's going to rain, and they're soaking their lawn. So they have these type of sensors that will shut down the system for that day, that period of time. I received one of those systems back in the 90s, I believe it was. And the guy across the street from the last house in California we lived in, he actually worked for an irrigation company. And he gave me a remote control that was actually, you would not remote from the phone, because the phones were just coming along. I mean, they were coming along, but couldn't really afford them. We had the candy bar phones prepaid at that time. But what his system was tied into satellite. And they have systems now that will tie into satellite. The one here depicted is more for moisture content in the air. That's how that one works. So it gets a certain high of moisture content, it's going to shut down, anticipating a rain. But they have ones that are tied to satellite that actually will read the weather forecast. So if they know rain is coming in the morning, they'll shut down in the evening, the previous evening, before the storm even gets there. And I got one of those. I never hooked it up. I just didn't take the time to do it. We had an irrigation system at the house, and I would have had to figure out the programming on it. He wasn't going to help me on that, but he was nice enough. In fact, I may have gave it away a couple years ago because it's outdated by now. I mean, that was back then. They have smaller ones. This thing was as big as some of the desktop mini computers now. That's where technology is changing, and it's very, very good technology that they're going to, because of water conservation is getting more and more important as we're running out of water. All right, moving ahead here, here's another example on how a drip system is set up. Here is supposedly a garden area on the bottom right here. Planter areas that the drip system is set through. Notice how the emitters are denoted. on here, the piping is solid, and then the emitters are just a circle on that. You'll be using the same format on your planning. And that second slide I showed you, you'll be at as well for sprays on sprinklers. Here's something that has to be pre-planned, going underneath existing concrete. Something you want to take in consideration on that. Here they're calling out the valve assembly. Anybody who ever runs into that problem, I didn't invent a tool, but I made a tool that's for sale on the market, but it's easily to make a tool called the Under Wonder that will actually go under concrete surfaces. Not real wide. I mean, you can do it under driveways, but it's a lot more work and doesn't always work. But under walkways, I did one here at the house we're in now, running an electrical line underneath a walk area. Low voltage, start reporting me. Low voltage for decorative lighting underneath. What else? Pull out the hardscape on here, just kind of look at how it's depicted on here. Right here, they do call it the button drippers or emitters. They're called emitters as well. James McGinn says bubblers, flooded areas, or tomato gardens. Bubblers can be for tomato gardens, yeah, or you can open them up to flood areas as well. They don't do as well as the bubblers. I'm sorry, I was double jumping here. The bubblers you can use for tomato gardens, yeah, as long as you don't have the riser up too high. We'll talk about risers, so you can use those for tomato gardens. James, emitters for water, not spray. They have different types of emitters. Some actually throw out a small spray pattern. It almost looks like a spider type pattern. But you can get different type of emitters that send out a single stream. So there's different types of emitters. Control the direction on that as well. James also says drip lines used to water underground. Drip lines used to water underground. Yes, you can. It's a science in itself. You really have to research it because it's distance and pressure, distance apart from not only the emitters, but the distance apart from the lines themselves. That's one reason it gets pretty pricey, because you have to run them pretty close together to get good saturation on that for underground water. Spray heads the spray heads, they're starting to use, or they have been using spray heads for football fields, baseball fields, etc. But they had in the past used the impact head, just for clarification. So there's probably different schools of thoughts on those. I haven't researched that enough. I know some football fields are using these huge spray heads, rotary actually type. But one of the advantages of the impact heads, advantage, disadvantage, is they could they know where the connector is, and they can put the connector off the field and then insert the impact head after the event is played, and then start spraying it, and then take the impact head away, where the ones on the field have to make sure they sink far enough in the ground and nobody's hitting those, either for a ground ball or somebody's knee from a football tackle goes down on one of those. So James says the last thing is, so would a drip line system would be good for a tree? Yes, it would. A drip system, as long as it's getting enough water, and there again, it doesn't hurt to go to that deep root. You could incorporate that in deep root watering system as well. So initially, you want to make sure that you're watering the base around the tree, and then include the drip line, and then eventually you could go just to a drip line, to the deep root watering, and eventually all deep root watering once it's established. So thumbs up on that, James. All right, cool. Good comments, James, for clarity. All right, we'll move ahead on that. For a deep root watering, probably I took mine down about 18 to 24 inches. somewhere in there, depending on how hard you want to work, I guess. All right. So here we have some information on, and I think these are links, if I remember correctly. Let's see. Oh, shoot, wrong one. Go. Let me just check these links so they're still working, and I think we're going to take a break here. If are. So, this is going to show you. Let me see if these links are. Well, to let you know, I guess I designed more in here than I thought. So it was 138. Let's come back at 150. I'll go ahead and put that in the chat. Let's take a break till 150 and go ahead. Let's go ahead and post any questions you have, and it looks like we got quite a bit to go through. I didn't know there was that much. We might not cover everything in here. I may leave it for you to review the information in here, but we have more to go through on lecture. So come back at 150 and we will continue on. I'll stop the recording and hopefully remember to start it when I come back.